Hello everyone and welcome to our level presentation. My name is Bart Huisman and I'm together with Hanna Beuger here to introduce Bubbling Bog Brewery, a redesign of a Banjo-Kazooie level made for Banjo-Kazooie for the Nintendo 64. So this is our level. It is based on the notion that this is Gruntilda's brewery where she brews her potions, and because she's not careful, the water has been infected, turning it poisoned, which we'll refer to as goo from now on. It's the green stuff you see here in the level. This also ties back to the bubbling bog part of the title of the level. We decided to color the level to signify danger as well as pickups and to clarify as we present the rest of the level. Here you can see the 2D node diagram overlaid on the 2D level design. And as we proceed, you can see it overlaid on the actual 3D level which we constructed in Maya. P stands for the player start, which is highlighted in yellow as well. A is the lower pipe yard area, B the upper pipe yard, C is Mumbo's hut, D is the brewery interior, E is the vat, which has both an inside as well as an outside area, F is the water storage, and G finally is the cauldron. So we decided to include the wading boots, which were introduced in the original level as well, because we feel that it works really well with the current theme we chose, and also because they are necessary in future levels. Bottles will introduce this mechanic in much the same way as in the original level. You can see here on the map we placed them here and here. So we decided to include two pair of the wading boots, as we tested out that the range of each of them is about 90 to 95 standard Maya units. As you can see here in this image, we use this as a measuring tool, and we decided that we needed to include two of them in order for the player to reach every area where they needed to go. Also, we have a transformation mechanic used through Mumbo's hut, which allows the player to transform into a being which is also resistant to the goo. So we will now explain our process of how we recorded the various metrics which can be found in the game and which were very important in constructing our own custom level. We started off by creating 1 by 1 by 1 standard blocks in Maya. These are used throughout recording the various metrics. We used them to construct gyms and imported those into Banjo's backpack, which allowed us to play these actual custom levels ourselves. And we used this for testing. We recorded metrics such as jump distance, but also various abilities such as the wading boots, because they only have a limited amount of use. After this process, we made measuring tools in Maya, which we used throughout the construction of the level. This was done to ensure that all the distances were actually working for the player to traverse the environment. We also extracted map information from the ROM itself and imported that into 3ds Max, for instance, to measure our angles, but we'll talk more about this next.
We have managed to import several level pieces of the actual game by using a tool called LEM D3D8 used in the 1964 emulator. This we could port to 3ds Max, but one problem, the scale was reduced by an unknown number, so we fixed this by using a jump pad, which we knew was 2 by 2 standard Maya units in Banjo's backpack, to measure the top of the lighthouse. Then we made a block that was the same size in 3ds Max, so a relative scale of 2 by 2. This we scaled with a number until we discovered the true range of one of the Banjo's original levels. For example, Treasure Trove Cove was 120 by 110 standard Maya units, and Mama's Mountain was 120 by 80 standard Maya units. Our level is about 100 by 100 standard Maya units. This is taking into account that the goo and the lack of inside areas mean that the level size is relatively small compared to Treasure Trove Cove, for example, but slightly bigger than Mumbo's Mountain. Before we get into the pickups, we'd like to highlight the player start. So what do you see first as the player? You do not see Mumbo's hut. This is done on purpose to adhere to the rest of Banjo and Kazooie's original levels. You do see the boss, one of the main puzzles, and some general traversal, which is meant to invite exploration either of the rest of the level or of either of the two main areas. We will now talk about the pickups and the resources scattered around this level. Here is an overview of all the Jiggy locations on the map. We made it so acquiring them is relatively easy because of the level of difficulty navigating the level. All minigames and races used to acquire these Jiggies use already given Banjo moves to solve them. The first Jiggy needs a transformation. Mumbo will, at the price of 10 tokens, transform Banjo into a glass vial. This means that no liquid can harm the player. Banjo as a vial can only walk, which is a sort of hop, and is about the same size as Banjo is originally. In the puzzle connected to this transformation, the player has to collect certain colored liquids that are acquired from 3 taps scattered around the level, which you can see highlighted here, and transport them to the vat, which is highlighted here. Mumbo will explain what Banjo will turn into through dialogue. The second Jiggy is hidden from view in the goo here. It is only accessible with the wading boots, unless the player manages to use the jump pad here to go through the opening, despite the camera not showing this opening when near the jump pad. We decided to leave this option in to reward hardcore players. Essentially, this challenge can be seen as a time trial. The third Jiggy is acquired through boss battle with Stewie, the spitting spatula. Stewie throws hot liquid from a cauldron, or if the player is close, it will swipe at them and push them back. The player has to dodge and wait for an opportunity. Once in a while, the spatula loses its balance and teeters on the edge of the cauldron. It can then be damaged with any kind of attack, but eggs are the best because the player can keep a distance without being swiped when Stewie recovers. When defeated, Stewie will fall into the cauldron, the contents splashing out. This can be done with a sound effect, not necessarily visually since it's on the N64, and the way will be free for the player to access the cauldron. Stewie's body can later be used to climb out of the cauldron with a talent rod. The battle will be initiated through dialogue, where Stewie does not allow anyone to touch the contents of the cauldron because it is his responsibility to stir, and he does not want anything to contaminate the brew. Pepper the Grinder dropped his cap down the water tank, but an enemy is guarding it. He asks Banjo to get it for him in exchange for the fourth Jiggy. Banjo has to swim down here, while avoiding the enemy, get the cap and give it back to Pepper for the reward. For the fifth Jiggy, Banjo has to climb the vat and take the steam-powered elevator up to the top, where he has to perform a flap flip. Croc the Deliverer was ordered to deliver some ingredients, but he lost the package, and he has to be fast or Grunty will punish him. Banjo has to race the clock to reach the item and return to Croc over this route. The exact way that is taken up is up to the player, but the presence of the jump pad will signpost this ideal route. After giving the package back to Croc, he will give you a Jiggy that he's found during one of his deliveries. The seventh Jiggy is hidden behind a grate in the brewery interior. A big barge is needed to break it and reach this Jiggy. Number 8 of all Jiggies is received by solving a puzzle here. The player has to make sure an ideal pressure is achieved by performing beak busts on 4 buttons, which each give a different amount of pressure. When too much pressure is given, the buttons reset. When ideal pressure is achieved, the Jiggy will be spit out of the previously blocked tap. A pipe cleaner will be present to explain the puzzle to the player, telling Banjo that the pipes are blocked and he needs help with fixing them. A distressed pipe worker will stand here. As Banjo approaches, he will tell him that the enemies keep breaking his pipes, and he dares not fight them. He will pay Banjo to get rid of them with a Jiggy. The enemies will appear here in 3 waves of subsequently increasing difficulty. Last but not least, all 5 jinjos have to be found for the 10th Jiggy to be received. They are put at challenging locations because of this fact and are spread out as to increase exploration. The purple jinjo can be found here. The yellow jinjo can be found here. The green jinjo is located here. The blue jinjo is here. And the orange jinjo is located here. This is an overview of where the tokens can be found. We decided to have 10 tokens because there is a transformation in this level. At this point in the game, it is common to need 10 skulls to buy the transformation. Only later in the game that number increases. The witch switch is located here, so it requires some exploration to be found. When triggered, a jiggy will appear in the entrance area of Bubbling Bog Brewery. Because of the difficulty of traversal and the newness of the dangerous goo, we added one extra life for the player at a location that is quite difficult to reach. Because of this, we also added 2 extra honeycombs. One is in Mumbo's hut, along with 8 blue eggs. The other is next to the brewery on a silo. Most eggs are near the cauldron, as to signpost the best tactic used during the boss battle. There are 42 eggs in total. We've put a total amount of 6 golden feathers in the level, similar to that of Bubblegloop Swamp, to ensure the game will play as normal in future levels. There are also 17 red feathers scattered around, so the player can collect these for later use. We used the 100 music notes mainly to signpost alternative routes and main routes. Let's talk about enemies, specifically their amount and location. The goo is considered to be the main enemy in this level. Aside from that, there are several enemies scattered around the level, and 3 waves of subsequently 2, 3, and 4 enemies for one of the Jiggy-related challenges. Of the enemies directly in the level, 2 are located in the brewery interior, 1 is roaming around Mumbo's hut, 1 is in the water storage tanks, and the last 2 are located in the pipe yards. Considering design, the enemy in the water is designed to be a chump, which is a fish used later in the original game that keeps to the surface of the water. The other enemies are mutated rats wearing aprons, therefore immune to the goo. This was our version of the Bubbling Bog Brewery. Thank you for listening.